what's up everybody? Justin here. Welcome back to the shop. So I've promised a video of a new boat project I've been working on a few weeks ago. We're going to be installing a windlass onto Calypso, which is my C-Dory 22 cruiser. Really excited about this. I think right out of the onset with this boat, I knew a windlass was going to be something that would really improve the usability of the boat. C-Dories are difficult to kind of get around to the bow. So it's an enclosed boat, it's a pilot house boat. So when you pull up to anchor, you got to steer up to the anchor spot, leave the boat in neutral, run out the back door, run up along the gunnels, up to the bow, drop the anchor, and hope in all that time that you didn't blow off your anchor spot. And then if you need to adjust, it's just back and forth to the helm. So it's kind of tricky to anchor these things. So a windlass, being able to drop the anchor with the push of a button, was like a must-have mod for me. And it's been a few months now since I've had the boat, and I've been keeping my eye out for a deal on a windlass. So knew these things are pretty expensive. It's a pretty pricey project. I was able to find a used Lewmar V700 vertical windlass, which is like the kind of the model I was specifically after for my boat. I found this used on eBay for like 500 bucks. This particular one came with a brand new motor kit, but it does need a little bit of love. There's a couple things we want to check out and replace. So in this video, we're going to talk about kind of what it takes to refurbish one of these. If you're kind of on a budget and you want to buy a used windlass, we're going to dive into this thing together, see how it works, see what sort of wear items we might need to look out for. And Defender Marine has hooked it up with a bunch of rebuild parts for us. So if you haven't used Defender before, they're an online retailer similar to like a West Marine or something like that, but they've got awesome prices and tons of boating supplies, whether it's, just oils and fluids for your motor, electronics, fish finders, radar, dinghies, just general hardware. They've got a huge selection, so definitely recommend checking out their website. I'll leave a link below in this video. If you use the link below to navigate to Defender and you buy stuff off that website, I get a kickback, so you'll be helping support the channel while still getting a great deal on boat supplies for your own personal projects. So without further ado, let's kick this off. I'm going to go through some of the parts and pieces that I've kind of acquired over the last few weeks to get this project kind of up and running. All right, so I've done a ton of research over the last couple months, really, on what sort of windlass I wanted for the boat, and then what sort of parts and pieces are required to complete the install. So I knew pretty early on. I was on the a forum called Seabrats, which is a C-Dory specific forum. A lot of people were really happy with this Lewmar V700 vertical axis windlass. So this, when they say vertical axis, what they mean here is that the kind of the axis of rotation of the gypsy or the capstan wheel here is vertically aligned. Typically that means the motor mounts below the deck, but there's a couple advantages to a windlass of this style. So one of the things I was really attracted to with this particular model was how low profile it was. And so all of this stuff kind of from here up is all that you see above the deck. So it's pretty flush mount. There's not a ton of room on the front of the C-Dory, so I wanted to avoid having a big bulky windlass that you could trip on or would take up a bunch of space. The motor is stored down below deck out of the elements, which is kind of nice. And then another big benefit of a vertical axis windlass as opposed to maybe a more traditional horizontal axis windlass is that if you look here, I'll kind of zoom in. So this is oriented towards the front of the boat. The anchor line is going to come in from the front area here around this gypsy, make kind of a 180-degree turn around the gypsy, which is this toothed wheel here that grabs onto the chain or rope. And then after making a complete kind of 180 turn, that's when it dives down into the anchor locker. And so what that means is you get, over 180 degrees of line engagement around the capstan or the gypsy, which means you just get like better traction on your anchor rode. Vertical axis windlass, they usually, if you mount it, if you imagine kind of tipping the windlass on its side, you'd have the anchor line coming up over the top and then just takes kind of a 90-degree turn and drops right down into the anchor locker. So you have much less engagement and much less like traction on the capstan wheel. So that was something that was also kind of appealing about a vertical axis windlass. Other than that, not a ton of frills here. This thing does have what they call a fall safe lock. So it's got this little lever here. We're going to rebuild this because it's kind of beat up and bent. But there's basically a ratcheting pawl that engages on this gypsy to lock the gypsy in place. So I assume that's just like a safety feature. So like when you're underway, you don't have to worry about this thing like backing out on you or something. We're still probably going to fasten the anchor while underway using a separate like clip feature. But anyway, this has this little fall safe pawl. And then one other feature that I think is probably pretty common in most windlasses is there's a kind of a clutch plate up here. So there's a wrench that drops into this little star piece. When you loosen this, you loosen the clutch on the Gypsy so that you can kind of free fall the anchor down. So if you're in really deep water and you want to drop the anchor quickly, you can crack this off to drop the anchor out really fast versus using the motor to drive the anchor out, which presumably would take a lot longer. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, this thing's got a little bit of wear, but the previous owner, before he sold it on eBay, did put a brand new motor kit on here. So this motor, all this kind of bottom end is brand new. So I'm excited about that. But let's take this thing apart and see what other parts and pieces we need to replace. Okay, so in addition to kind of refurbishing the windlass, I'm going to take you through a lot of the parts and pieces I picked up for this project. So first thing you're going to need is a printed out cut template. This is from Lewmar. It was a little tricky for me to scale it correctly, but this is the template you're going to lay on the deck, and you use this to mark out the holes that you're going to have to cut in the deck. Not looking forward to that part, but I'll definitely feel a lot more comfortable doing this with a proper template. We've got a new kind of seal kit for this thing, so a new gasket and a new backing plate. I may make a larger backing plate for this. We'll see once I kind of get an idea of how thick and sturdy the hull is. We'll see, but this was a kit I picked up off of Defender. The original kind of gasket kit was pretty spent on this thing. It had been installed on a boat for a number of years. We also picked up a couple replacement pieces here, if you can see this, but we've got a new fall safe lever. So that's this little red lever here that's all sun faded. I was able to get that off of Defender Marine. And then I also got this special clutch lever wrench that drops into the top plate here and allows you to release the clutch. Those are all Lewmar factory items. In addition to that, I got a new mounting bolt kit. So these are stainless steel mounting studs that are used to bolt this thing through the deck. So got that from Defender as well. And then this particular windlass was missing this plastic piece. I don't know, you might call this like a chain pipe. What this does is this goes under, I spin this around, this little plastic piece kind of fits in here somehow, maybe like that. And that basically protects, there we go, yeah, it fits right there. So that protects the hull pass through, so when you have chain dropping through your, kind of the hole cut out in your deck, it's not bouncing off the fiberglass and dinging it up. This plastic piece will kind of take the blow for you and smooth out the fall into the anchor locker. So I think that's it for kind of like refurbishment parts. If you were to buy a brand new windlass, I think it would come with all of this stuff you see here. But a couple other parts and pieces I picked up separately. So we've got some wire. So this is 2 conductor, I believe this is 8 gauge wire. We're going to use this to run power from the previously upgraded enlarged like power wiring that I ran to the console. We've got a panel mounted circuit breaker. This is a 40 amp circuit breaker. This is going to go, I'll probably mount this in the dash of the boat, and this is going to protect the electrical system in case of an overload. So this is a really important thing to have with something kind of with an electrical component like a winch. This winch is going to pull some serious current, 30, 35 amps. So we will be by far the largest electrical load on the boat. Thankfully, it's only intermittent. But say the anchor gets hung up on a log or something like that, and this thing really loads up. This motor is going to load up, it's going to pull a bunch of current, and then this will kick in and trip so you don't burn anything up. So this is a really critical safety feature to have. It's going to keep you from burning up any other wiring on your boat or burning up the motor of the windlass itself. I also got this, sorry, the bad shot. I got this switch here. I should have taken this out of the bag first, but this is just a panel mounted switch. This is going to go on the dash, and it's just a rocker switch for windlass up, windlass down, and then it has this little LED light, I guess, which will tell you if you're, I don't know if that stays on with just the switch or if that's on when the circuit breaker's on, to kind of tell you the windlass is armed, but we'll figure that out. In fact, we could probably wire it however we want to. So this is the control switch for the dash. This will be sweet because now we can just pull up to an anchor spot and while still at the helm, just push a button to drop the anchor. I'm so stoked about having that capability. However, I was thinking, what if the anchor's fouled up and you got to go forward to to kind of handle something, it'd be nice to be able to control the anchor from the front of the boat as well. And so I picked up from Amazon this remote control kit. This is from, this is not marine specific, and frankly, it's not, you know, super high quality or anything, but it's not a safety critical item, so I'm okay with it. But this is a winch controller. This came in like a 2-pack, and so this is a wireless remote that we'll be able to use to drop the anchor or raise the anchor from anywhere on the boat. So if you need to run up to the bow, you can take this with you and remotely control the windlass if you're not at the helm. With that package came this little, I guess like radio receiver box with a little relay that's going to go to the contactor. And then the last thing I got here was one of these heavy duty switching contactors. So this is you got to have this for a windlass. Some people actually like straight wire windlasses to a heavy duty switch on the dash, but I've read online that a lot of people have issues with that and those switches will fail over time because this is a ton of current. I mean, you're pulling a whole lot of load through the electrical system when you run this windlass. And so this heavy duty contactor is designed to handle a lot of current basically. So this is just a big fat relay essentially. And this will be what sends the power from the battery basically and allows it to go to the windlass motor. It also will reverse the electrical contacts. So whenever you want to pull the anchor up or drop the anchor, all that switching is handled in here. And so the switch from the kind of dash mounted electrical switch, as well as this controller that's controlled by this remote control, both of those will get wired in parallel to, you know, one of these terminals on this contactor, and then this thing handles the heavy duty switching needed to convey all that current from the battery to this big fat motor. Other than that, I think that's most of it. I did pick up a couple little supplies. So I've got some Cabasil silica filler here. So this is going to be used to thicken some epoxy. So when we cut a hole in the deck of the boat, this particular boat's got a balsa core, and we got to make sure that we seal that up really well so that water from the deck, if it gets underneath the gaskets, doesn't soak into that balsa core and rot the deck out. And so once we cut the hole in the deck, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up some thickened epoxy, and we're going to coat all of that really nicely. Same for the bolt holes. We're going to drill the needed bolt holes. We're going to actually drill those larger than they need to be. We're going to fill those holes with this thickened epoxy, and then we're going to re-drill to the correct size, kind of right through that epoxy, so that everything remains completely sealed and the core of the deck remains watertight. So those are all the parts and pieces for this project. There's a couple little odds and ends I didn't mention, like, you know, you're going to need some ring terminals and stuff for the wiring, and then miscellaneous tools. I imagine we'll need a jigsaw, drill, and then some basic, you know, screwdrivers, wrenches, stuff like that, but stuff that most people probably have in their garage. So that is the overview of what I got in preparation for this project. All right, so we're on the bench here. So before I, you know, go through the trouble of installing this thing on the boat, it was used. I got it off of eBay. And I really don't know what to expect condition-wise. So I really want to take this thing apart, have a look under the hood, and see if there's any gears or anything like that that we want to replace ahead of time before we, you know, commit to bolting this thing up. So let's get this apart and see what we can find inside. So I'm just freestyling this. I don't have any instruction manual. We'll see how it goes. Start by backing these screws out. We're going to take this kind of anchor pass-through cover off. It's always a good idea when you do projects like this, have a little plastic cup to keep your hardware in. Keep a rag on hand here too. This thing's a little bit greasy. Yeah, so we'll just keep our hardware stored in this little plastic cup just to keep things organized. So that came off pretty easy. I guess this clutch plate comes right off. Yep. There's a washer. And then the gypsy, does it just pull off? I guess we have to take this retaining arm thing out first. So let's do that. All the screws are coming out nice and easy. That's a plus. Looks like they're all the same size and length too, which is always a bonus. Yeah, so far all these fasteners have been identical. I really like that. It makes keeping track of the hardware just so much easier. Okay, so here's our gypsy. You can see that. I guess that's in okay condition. I mean, it definitely is. It's got a little bit of wear, but we'll try it out and we'll see how it works. I mean, I guess if it's not great, we'll get a new one from Defender. It looks to me like, without having put chain or anything around this, it looks like these outer teeth are what are used to engage the links of the chain. those are the ones that are a little banged up. The inner teeth in this groove here, I imagine, are what are going to engage on the rope part of the road. So that's probably the thing that I would be most concerned about. If those are really sharp or dinged up, it might tear up your anchor rod. But we'll see how that goes. Doesn't look too bad. And there's no like cotter pin or anything in there. It's just straight up friction fit with this washer pressing against the inside of that bell. That's the clutch assembly. It's pretty cool. All right, we got to take this guy out now. Okay, here's the little retaining arm. It does look like this bolt is totally bent. I don't know if you can see that. May try to straighten. I mean, that's a special shoulder bolt. We'll have to get that from Lewmar. Maybe like McMaster Car might sell something, but you're not getting that at your local hardware store. I may see if I can straighten that out to start with and see if we have any luck. And there's also a spring in here. I think the spring looks like it's in good shape. Nothing too crazy just yet. This guy stays on there. We will take off. There's this little fall safe lever. Ooh, definitely going to take that off because we've got a replacement from Defender. Thank you, Defender. And this little cam, this thing looks like it's in good shape. It's got a spring in there too, so I don't think I'm going to mess with it. Make sure it's tight. Yeah, I'm not going to take that off because there's a spring in there. And it looks to me like that's all I can get at from here. So maybe the next step is we got to take this little blue motor cover off, and then we can get to some screws a little further down below. So I'm just going to snip these zip ties. Put new ones of those on later. And then take this plastic cover off. Cool. So the seller on eBay said this is a brand new motor kit, and it looks like it. It looks brand new to me. I have to agree with them. So that is sweet. We are going to have to get a real Allen wrench to get these guys off. So there's just 3 bolts, socket head cap screws that hold the motor assembly to the, I don't know, whatever goes above deck here. This crap goes loose. Yeah. Okay, so that's loose. How do we get... Yep, I'm gonna have to refer to the internet. Okay, so I got this thing split apart. You can see here's kind of the motor assembly. Bunch of smaller gears in there, some needle bearings, plenty of grease, which looks good. And then this is the deck unit with kind of the main heavy-duty gearbox. So I took a look in here. All these gear teeth look really good. I don't see any signs of wear at all, actually. I'm looking for metal shavings, worn down teeth, anything like that, and it looks really really clean in here. Plenty of grease. The only thing that's I'm a little unsure about is I'm sure there's some kind of shaft seal that sits below where the shaft for the gypsy passes through, and it would be nice to be able to inspect that, but it's kind of hard to get in there. I'd have to really tear into this thing, so I'm just going to assume that's okay. The grease in here looks fresh. Doesn't look like it's full of water or anything, so we're just going to assume that's okay and roll with it. I think I'm just going to load this thing back up with a bunch more grease and put it back together. But as far as I can tell, everything looks pretty normal. Okay, so I've got the deck unit here separated from the motor and kind of gearbox housing. And about 3 rolls of paper towels later, I've got most of the grease out of this thing. So at first I took a glance at this, looked okay, and then I was like, let me scoop some of the grease out of here and just make sure I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary. So for the most part, everything looks pretty good. I don't see any signs of kind of abnormal wear. Really, the gear teeth look like they're in awesome shape. No metal shavings or anything like that. It does look like someone was in here previously and they've kind of like grabbed onto this the shaft with something and kind of marred it up a little bit. So hopefully that doesn't screw up one of these needle bearings in here. Didn't see that. That was hiding behind the grease. So I'm glad I wiped all that grease out. But overall, everything looks to be in really good shape. So I think I'm gonna grab some fresh grease and pack this thing up again and put it back together. Call it good. The only thing I didn't inspect, which is a little, hopefully not suspect, but it would be nice to get some eyes on, is the shaft seal in this kind of deck plate that seals the shaft of the Gypsy from the rest of the gearbox. So I'm going to assume that's in good shape. Everything turns kind of nicely. If that were blown out, I guess you risk getting water down into this gearbox. But it looks kind of tricky to get to that, guy. So I'm just going to assume it's good. I didn't see any signs of like water intrusion in the gearbox so far, so I'm going to roll with it. So let's pack this thing back full of grease and get it back together. I should be wearing gloves for this, but by the time I remember to wear gloves, it's usually too late. So I'm just going to load this thing up with tons and tons of grease. I don't think you can ever have too much grease. Pack it into these needle bearings. All right, we got this thing put back together. She's all lubed up, rebuilt, looks good. So I think the next step is I'm gonna go ahead and hook this up to probably just my car battery, just to make sure that it spins freely, everything looks like it's working right, before we truly commit to drilling holes into the boat and installing this thing. All right, so I'm just gonna hook this up to my truck battery, just because it's kind of like the most convenient battery I have, 12-volt battery I have handy. So set this up right here, make sure everything's all clear and there's no wires in it, and then let's fire it up. So it's spinning pretty smoothly, and that's going to be like forward, you might say, or pulling the anchor in, and then we can just simply reverse the polarity of these leads, put the negative on the positive and vice versa, since this is a DC motor. And that should, there we go, that reverses the direction. Spinning freely, sounds pretty smooth. So I think this thing really checks out, and we're ready to put it on the boat. Sweet. Shined up really nice too, which I'm pretty pumped about. Looks good. All right, so I think that's gonna do it for part one of this video. We've got this thing rebuilt, re-lubed, inspected. Looks like it's gonna be a solid device. Big shout out again to Defender Marine for hooking it up with a few rebuild parts. You know, little knickknacks. We got this new fresh fall safe lever arm thing. We've got a Lewmar clutch wrench that drops in here that'll allow us to break this thing loose to drop the anchor quickly if we need to, or work on it on the water. We got a new mounting kit and a few other odds and ends. So again, big shout out to Defender Marine for supporting this video. I'm going to leave a link down in the description. And if you need anything for your own boating supply, check Defender Marine out. And if you wouldn't mind using the link down below, when you do that, I get a kickback from that. And so you help support the channel at the same time. So I'd really appreciate it if you go check them out. Like I said, they've got you covered from everything from, you know, cleaners and waxes and lubricants for your boat, all the way to like really high-end electronics, fish finders, autopilot systems, stuff for your motors. They got a bunch of inflatable dinghies. They've got lines, riggings, anchors, all that kind of stuff. So check them out. Really appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Part 2 of this video is up next. We're going to start installing this thing on the boat. So that'll be the exciting part. Really looking forward to being able to drop an anchor with the push of a button on the C-Dory. I think that's going to be a big game changer. So thanks for tuning in. I'll link part 2 in the description. And if you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video. And if you have any suggestions for future videos, please feel free to drop those down in the comments. Love hearing what you guys are up to and what you're thinking. So thanks again for watching. Appreciate the support, and I hope this was helpful.